For sure. Oh, yeah, I know. Happy Wednesday morning, everybody. Excuse me. Good morning, good morning, good morning this morning. All right, so here's the deal. We just have to have this conversation because you need to have this information so you can really have an informed decision about what the hell's really going on. We just got word today that our county executive here in St. Louis County is going to make a surprise announcement. The surprise announcement is he's tired of getting sued by doctors, by moms, dads, by businessmen and women for not abiding by his oath to take care of our people in our county. And so here's the deal. The truth is this. The numbers don't support what's happening in the world today, period. If you don't like it, I don't care. Here's some common sense for you. We're no longer talking about deaths. We're talking about infection rates on a test that's not validated. Yesterday, I did a radio show and I was talking to them about the testing, and it blew their mind because they didn't understand the testing. And they said, why has no one talked to us about this on local TV, local radio, etc.? So I'm going to lay the testing on you so you can understand that, okay? Here's what I'm going to share with you, okay? Second of all, according to the CDC, only 6% of our population that died of coronavirus or COVID-19 really truly only had COVID-19. Everybody else had other underlying conditions that could have been and was exacerbated by the virus. That's a fact. So that means out of 200,000 people, 6% of that is what? 12,000 individuals? Come on. More people die from Tylenol in the United States every year than that, all right? So listen, here's the deal. By the way, Tika, I've been here the whole time. They've just been suppressing my message, okay? Pat, good morning from Washington. Hope you guys are all great. Holly, good morning. Love you, sister. Hope you're doing good. Here's the truth. You know what? You want to know something about these tests? Now, I'm going to tell you. You better save this, and I mean it. Save this afterwards, because I promise you by noon today, this will be gone. It will be gone. It will not be there. Now, how do I know this? I'm part owner of a lab. You know what that means? That means I know how to do testing. I understand how to read them. I understand, what the process is behind it. Let's talk about the COVID-19 test, okay? Here's the deal. It's called the PCR test, which is also referred to as a viral load test. They take that big old swab, they stick it way down up in your nasopharyngeal passage. They do some they pull out a sample of They pull out a sample of DNA. What they do is they take a little sample of that DNA, boom, and then they test it in this machine, and this machine magnifies what they find. So here's what they're looking for. First of all, I need you to understand this. When you have a virus, a bug, or a bacteria, what happens is this, is to do a PCR, which, by the way, let me back up a minute. The guy who created the PCR test, his name is Dr. Kerry Mullins, and Kerry won a Nobel Prize for these tests. And the deal with what the Nobel Prize he won, and he said, listen, these tests, and this is a quote from him. It says this. He said, you cannot use these tests to prove infection. You cannot use these tests to prove infectious etiology or diagnose infectious disease. So what the hell's the point of the test then? But here's the deal. They take that little swab, they put it on this machine, and what they do is they magnify it, they amplify it, they make copies of it, they blow it up so they can see it. So think about this. They take this little speck of a molecule, and they blow it up and blow it up and blow it up until you can see it, okay? Until they can see that thing. And what happens is once you blow it up to a magnification of around 36 copies, that's when we find you can start seeing the color change on the test that indicates that it's a positive for a COVID test. Now, here's the deal. Listen to me on this. When you have a PCR test, you have to have a gold standard. The virus has to be, number one, identified, isolated. So that's number two. It has to be replicated. You have to be able to prove reinfection, and you should be able to see under electron microscopes thousands and thousands or millions of these little boogers all across the country. We don't have that. We don't have a gold standard. There is no gold standard. Ask anybody, ask any scientist, ask any doctor, has there been a gold standard for the COVID-19 testing yet? The answer is no. No, 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 okay? Number two, understand this. I wrote this down. When you use a surrogate testing, which is what PCR is called surrogate testing, which means that you are, you're using let me give you an analogy. One of the doctors taught me this analogy the other day. He says, well, if I go to the store and I'm trying to figure out in the store how many workers are there that have blue eyes, okay? So I go in the store and I have everybody line up and I count how many people have blue eyes. That gives me a definite number of how many people have true blue eyes. Well, if we assume and we find out that people that have blue eyes wear glasses, then everybody who buys glasses is essentially going to have blue eyes, according to that logic and reason. The issue is this, is that with the surrogate testing, all those variables have to be true. So what we're looking at with the PCR test is we're measuring an RNA sequence, Now, I'm going to get to a point in just a minute that you've got to hear. This is very, very, very important, okay? The RNA, they're measuring the RNA that they're saying that has been identified out of a virus that has evolved and mutated. Remember, the flu mutates every year, sometimes multiple times throughout the year. Same thing with COVIDs. We know that there are 36 other coronaviruses that we have identified that we know about anyway, that has public knowledge, that's been around for, 50 years. So we know that this is a evolution, this is a mutation of it that has an RNA sequence. So they're taking those swabs, they magnify this up and blow it up big enough so that we can see the RNA sequence, okay? Once we magnify it to 36, let me say this, 36 is the magic number. So once it hits 36, we can usually start seeing the color change on the PCR, which indicates a positive test for the RNA in this particular sequence of this virus. Again, it hasn't been isolated. It hasn't been reinfected. We don't have the virology on it. We don't have any of that stuff yet. Okay, so here's the deal. 36 is the number. And the higher the copies, the more magnification they get. Like if it goes to 40, they find more positives. Do you understand that? So the more the magnification, the more positive they find. Now here's the deal. Here's what the research is showing. At 60 cycles, listen to me on this. At 60 cycles, at 60 magnifications, they're finding 100% of the people tested. 100% of the people tested are testing positive at a 60 times magnification. This message is going to get shut down. I'm going to get internet banned again for this. I can promise you right now. So you guys need to go to ericnaputi.com. That's ericnaputi.com so you can follow these messages later, because I'm telling you right now, you got to join the movement. You're not going to hear this message anywhere else. I'm surprised that there's, you guys watching live on Facebook now. So here's the deal. 36 seems to be that magic number that they start measuring and they can see the positive test. Again, there's no gold standard to compare that positive test to. So we don't know if that's valid. That's why the test has not been validated yet. That's why the FDA says, no, we can't validate it. It's because the testing doesn't work. If you magnify it above a 60, every man, woman, and child on the planet that's been tested at a 60 shows positive. What does that mean? That means that RNA sequence is in our body somewhere, somehow, some excretion on something. So here's the deal. Think about this. Think about this for a minute. This disease is so bad, it has a 99.96 survivability rate, and it's so bad that 80+% of the population has to get tested to know if they even have it. Did you hear what I just said? To know if they even have it. All right? Now here's the deal. The more you magnify, the more you amplify, the more you make copies of that RNA sequence, the bigger it gets and the more you see the RNA. If it's above a 40, you see higher numbers of positive. When it goes to 60 amplifications and copies, 100% positive across the board. Look it up. Google it. Look it up. Look it up. Man, I saw this and it blew my freaking mind. So here's the deal. Is that so if you go, let's say 36 is the gold standard of, not the gold standard, but it's when you start seeing the color change, and you go to 35, you see less positives, okay? They're showing all kinds of false positives, false negatives, but again, compared to what? Because we don't have a gold standard, because again, the virus has not been isolated, it has not been replicated, we don't have the virology, it hasn't been purified, there's not millions and millions of copies on electron microscopes, we don't have that yet, but we're basing everything that's happening in our society right now off of the testing for detection of RNA sequences of a virus that has a 99.96% survivability rate. Are you freaking kidding me? So how do we control that? How do they control the numbers? Well, the more copies that they do, the more positive they can find. Remember the labs in Florida that were showing 100% of their tests that came through were positive, 100% of them? It's not even mathematically possible to do that. Do you understand what I'm telling you? And so how do they make it look like, oh, we're winning, we're beating this thing? Start testing at 35 copies or below. Do you understand that? So the higher the copies are, the more testings are going to show positive. That's why you see a lot of these NFL guys, they had 77 NFL players test positive in one day, and the next day reran the test, and they ran it at a lower copy, and guess what? They're negative. Come on, you guys. And again, do whatever you want to do. I don't care, but look at the numbers. Nobody's reporting on this stuff. Why is nobody talking about this? Why do we have to go on social media and do that? And why does social media ban us and block us for telling the truth? You guys can look this stuff up. It's all over the internet. It's all over studies. It's all over peer reviews. Look at who the testing sites are going through. They're trying to push them through where? Health department sites. Why? The health department can control the numbers. Okay? That's what's going on. That's what's going on. So, anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Here's again, I'm going to tell you one more. Stop. And shame on you doctors for not standing up to this thing. I mean, shame on you guys. All and girls, all of you should all be ashamed of yourselves because you just don't have enough common sense to understand, all right? So we're making a lot of assumptions with this, okay? If you don't have a gold standard isolated molecule or pathogen for COVID-19, they don't want you to know this information. So God bless you guys. God bless you all. I love and appreciate you all more than you can imagine. And I'll see you all soon. Be blessed, everybody. Bye.